France's far-right National Rally enjoyed some remarkable gains in the first round of the country's parliamentary elections. Will the far-right be able to rule France for the first time in over 5 decades? We're joined by Professor Richey. It's good to have you back.
Great, thanks for having me.
First of all, for those of us who may not be too familiar with the far-right National Rally, Professor Richey, please do explain what the party represents and where it's come from.
Sure. Ideologically, the roots go back to the early 1950s, a movement known as Poujadisme. This was named after Pierre Poujade, who was a populist, anti-tax, pro-colonial, who put together a group of very small, relatively extreme parties who were in particular really upset about the fact that under Charles de Gaulle, France was willing to perhaps give up its colonies in North Africa, or its colony in North Africa, Algeria. The modern incarnation of the National Rally goes back to 1972 when it was founded by Jean-Marie Le Pen, who was its first president. He was a populist, nationalist, anti-Semite, anti-Islam, anti-immigrant leader. He remained party leader until 2011. His daughter, Marine Le Pen, took over in 2012 and sort of rebranded the party. It's changed its name from the National Front to the National Rally, and has also attempted to sort of tone down some of the sharp edges of the party, notably, some of the more strident anti-Semitic and anti-immigrant rhetoric, at least. She currently shares power with Jordan Bardella, a 28-year-old who is technically party leader and would be the presumptive nominee for the prime minister's position if the National Rally were to get an absolute majority in the upcoming legislative election.
Right, and let's talk about the first round of the election. The vote turnout in Sunday's poll soared to reach 67% now. That's the highest in a parliamentary election since 1997. What does such a record figure indicate?
Well, one of the things that it means is that we have a record number of second round election situations in which you might potentially have 3 or even 4 candidates because of the way that French legislative elections work. We don't have time to go into it in detail, but the short version of the story is unless you win an absolute majority, the first and second place candidates move into the second round, and any candidate who gets 12.5% or more of the vote of the total number of of registered voters in a district move into the second round. And so one of the big things, therefore, that comes out of this is we have a lot of these possibilities simply because the mass of voters is higher. This means that we're going to have a lot of attention paid today when the final decision is made about which candidates are going to move into the second round. As to whether or not some of these candidates on the center-right and the center-left will drop out, so that the 3- and 4-way races will be reduced to 2-way races, because these 3- and 4-way races, they tend to split the vote and will allow the National Rally to have more candidates who win in the second round. So we don't know exactly how this is going to shake out. This is what's going on today in France, and this means that the outcome is less knowable. I think a second issue is that the record turnout means that whatever the outcome is, the French National Assembly will have more political legitimacy than ever before. And thirdly, I would argue that this simply shows us that the National Rally has picked up more supporters compared into previous elections. Even though their percentage numbers aren't that much higher than 2017, the total number of voters is higher. And so in that regard, we see that the National Rally has been picking up support within France.
Definitely enjoying the upper hand for now. Professor Richey, let's say the far-right National Rally ends up ruling France. How big of a change will that be for France? I mean, what noticeable changes should we expect to come out right away?
Sure. Currently, this is not the most likely outcome. The most likely outcome is that we're going to end up with some type of hung parliament or some type of minority technocratic government. But if the National Rally were to present the prime minister and take over that office, among other things, it would mean a very significant testing of French political traditions. The tradition under these situations where the president is of a different party from The prime minister is known as cohabitation. And that has been ruled by tradition, where essentially the president retains control over foreign security and defense matters, and domestic politics are left largely to the parliament and to the prime minister and the government of ministers surrounding the prime minister. I think we're going to see a real test as to whether or not that can work, because that's not statutory. That's not that's not contained in statute. That's just French political tradition. Domestically, you would have a lot less power from Macron. And one of the things that would mean is that the Europe policy of France would shift dramatically, because that's considered to be domestic politics. And so although Macron would continue to represent France at EU Council, so head of state meetings, it's the ministers who go to the various European Council of Ministers meetings, and so the Parliament and the ministers would have a lot more authority over Europe than previously. Secondly, internationally, we would see probably less cooperation with allies. We would see potentially France moving to exit NATO's integrated military command. And we would see a lot more Russia-friendly behavior, quite likely, from France, including, therefore, also less support for Ukraine.
Professor Richey, you mentioned this figure, the face of National Rally Jordan Bardella, earlier. He did play a huge role in the victory this time, didn't he? I mean, he is on his way to become the youngest prime minister of France.
Yeah, so he has a sort of star quality in a way. He's a good-looking guy. He's young. And as I said, the National Rally, especially under Marine Le Pen, has been trying to polish their image, take away some of the sharp edges, hide some of the party's anti-Semitic, Nazi-friendly origins. And he has a backstory which is sort of compelling. He comes out of a banlieue, a suburb outside of Paris called Drancy, in one of the poorer areas or in and around Paris. He does himself have some immigrant background, and so he's able to sort of use this as a part of his narrative, about how it's possible for the little guy to climb the ladder and become powerful and successful in France. I'll also note that there's some charges of nepotism, insofar as Marine Le Pen's older sister is also his stepmother. So within the National Rally, there's also been some charges of nepotism that have been helping his rise to power.
Definitely quite a character. All right, Professor Richey, thank you so much for your time this morning. We appreciate it.
Great. Thanks for having me.